Good evening. Welcome to Investigator News, and this is a World War III report and news. And I got a lot of news right before me and William get going, and hopefully it will be a long enough show. We have a lot to discuss, but not, the news. William and me have said, flexing of the muscles. Now, is this what's going on between Iran and Israel, or is it something more serious? Now, I want to start off with Senator Feinstein was taken to the hospital after a scary incident in her home. Now, she tripped and fell in her home, according to the report. Um, the injuries weren't really clear. The 90-year-old senator was discharged from the hospital and returned home Tuesday night. So she's okay, folks. 90 years old. Wow. Um, Boy, too old to be a senator. That's just my opinion. Um, and then, we had breaking news today. The Republicans in the U.S. House of Representatives have done their investigating into President Biden's son Hunter. And now we're finding they're churning up bank records that say those bank records prove oligarchs from Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan were funneling big money to companies linked to the Biden family. The timing of those payments is now putting Joe Biden under a fresh cloud of suspicion. Um, a lot of people want to call it the pay to play investigation. Now they have a new statement reading as part of the committee has now identified over $20 million in payments from foreign sources to the Biden family, their business associates. Republicans are saying the timing is key to some of those foreigners that seem to be rewarded with access to Joe Biden. One example, a Russian oligarch paid out millions just weeks before the vice president had a winner with that same oligarch, but at Washington, D.C. Um, and, we've seen Kevin McCarthy and a few of them, but we, uh, and a lot of the Biden administration is saying there's not enough proof. Well, now they do have enough proof that Hunter Biden and his son were receiving payouts from multiple uh, uh, oligarchs. And what gets me? Why aren't they going after the Ukrainian oligarchs? Isn't that weird? Isn't that what Zelensky was about with during the Trump administration to go after the oligarchs that stole millions and billions of dollars from that country?
So,
Um,
Ellie,
yeah.
the oligarchs are effectively what their generals are. Their generals are effectively royals, okay? So that's just how these countries function.
Hmm.
Um, they're run by oligarchs. The average person doesn't understand how to move corporations, businesses forward fast enough to outrun these oligarchs. And so what you see is countries not move forward, but back up into previous type of governments they had before communism, rather
Hmm.
than jump forward into a more democratic or Republican form of government. So you get a little bit of everything, and oligarchs don't like to go after oligarchs. They don't like to upset the apple cart.
Mm-mm. Oh no.
They like their yachts, they like their airplanes, they like their lifestyle, and they want to be left alone.
And now we're seeing that um, we have put in millions, maybe even billions, into the Afghan uh, uh, when we had to pull everybody out or pull people out, and also a lot of the people. It was millions, maybe billions, they said, of taxpayers' money that Joe Biden used for this botched exit.
The
Um,
the first numbers I heard were 81 billion, and then the number kept going down. So it's
it's
probably 81 billion.
Yeah, well, they're of course they're going to shave off everything they can, so it could be 81 billion. It could be 2 billion. We never get a straight fact figure data or documents from this administration, and it's really sad because they should. If they're afraid of being found out, then they shouldn't be doing crooked things. Or they should be proud to show what they did in Afghanistan, because that's what they said. They were proud. Now, when the facts and figures are coming out of what they did and what they spent, what they charged us, now everything is going to be redacted, closed, off limits, and it isn't true.
Well, they're
Sad.
still proud. They're just not proud, in the United States. They're proud in other countries.
And now on the border, you know, what is going on with the border. Now, they had 2,000 try to storm uh, over the weekend, I believe. And in order to keep them from totally, when they seen they were coming, they broke through the bridge, they put up razor wire. And the Democrats are throwing a great big old fit over this. But they thwarted them getting over and made them basically shuffle in the right way to be brought into the country. And then, of course, they're saying with Abbott wanting these buoys with razor wire, they're saying all of this is inhumane, and they want to um, sue not only the Republicans but Abbott for using razor wire that's inhumane. What's inhumane is now are get this, William. We sent this one guy. He's from El Salvador, I think is where, or Venezuela, an MS-13 guy that has killed or hurt people really bad, rape, murder. We sent him back 4 times. He's back again. We just caught him. Now we're going to send him back a 5th time. And this is what we're seeing on the border, and Border Patrol are seeing. Now, are we going to see anything from Mayorkas or Garland or the DOJ or anything? No, they're just turning their heads at this point. They're not even. They don't even. According to um, quite a few on the border, they're not even willing to talk about it at this point now. You
Well,
questioned our borders are. Now we have nothing to say.
only the President of the United States has the capacity to make individuals go away. I don't know if you know that. Has the legal right to make dangerous individuals go away in the world. This is one of them.
Oh
This is
yeah.
not somebody you play with.
And more
This
and
is
more.
somebody that, this is somebody that governments cannot manage any longer.
Yeah, and we're finding a lot with the FBI too. Not only the Department of Justice or Homeland Security, but then the FBI. I think, William, we talked before the show, and I think they're starting to crumble a little bit because they've got more whistleblowers coming out of the FBI, some coming out of the CIA. And then now we found out an FBI agent who investigated, debunked Trump Russia collusion. He's to plead guilty in a Russian oligarch case. So we're chewing away at them one by one. I know we'd rather go 10 by 10s or 20 by 20s to get rid of these guys because we had seen the top 50 to 100 in the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, the NSI, DNI, a lot of them. They were um, we took out the top portion, what the ones in control. And me and William talked about this, and it seemed like they all came back. They all didn't come back. It was just the next form, the next set of corrupted FBI.
So,
I don't think we put a dent in them, William.
well, when you're dealing with leadership, Ellie, you can't do wholesale. We'll just call it like a meat packers would call it, with slaughter, right? You can't do a wholesale slaughter. So you do onesies and twosies, and that maintains some stability within the organizations, because you don't want these organizations become super destabilized and then go off on their own in every direction. That's just as dangerous. So that's what they're going through with this. Now, if they were to reorganize the agencies on a congressional plan, that's when you take everybody, you give them 3 months worth of severance pay, right? And you create a new organization, and then you hire them in where you need them all around the country, and you reorganize the entire agency. Now that way, you do it by the tens and hundreds that way. So it just depends on how Congress wants to act with relation, and the administration wants to act with relating to these agencies. Now we have so many intelligence agencies now that the intelligence agencies spend probably the majority of their time watching each other's intelligence agencies. See what I'm saying? They're running out of things to do. We just have too many of them in too small place. So that's something that needs to be dealt with. So do we need to thin them out and move them out into the world so we get more human information rather than electronic information? These are all questions that are going to have to be asked and dealt with if they want to deal with U.S. citizens being spied on.
Yeah. And you know, it was so weaponized during I'm gonna say the Obama years. Uh, and that's something I'll probably have a little bit on my report for tomorrow. But it was so weaponized, and so like the very first, I think I said this last night. One of the very first FISA courts that they went to against Trump was they had to seek him as um, um, an average American to go after him. And the way they worded it basically not only went after him and his family because they were average Americans, but it opened it up so the FBI could spy on all American citizens.
And
And
the FISA court should have never allowed that. They knew
no,
better.
oh, I know. But when you got Obama that's backing it up and you got
So
Comey and
that tells you the FISA court shouldn't be reauthorized.
right.
It's not functional.
Yeah. And when
it's not protecting the interest of the American people, which is what it was put there for. So why use it?
yeah. Um, and the other thing we were talking about is all this money going to Ukraine. Well, they're talking over 200 billion has been sent to Zelensky and Ukraine. And we all I'm going to say our viewers and a lot of people in America want to know where that money went. And because now um, Biden administration will be seeking an additional 10 billion for aid for Ukraine this time, even though when they asked what it was exactly for, um, they said, well, the report said the exact size of the new package will not really be defined, but cited the source of it, did not name as saying they would be asking for, north of 10 billion. And really, it's not of importance for Congress or Senate to know what it's being spent on. It's just aid.
So
Um,
it's
yeah,
Ukraine's worked up an arms deal. They need more money. They call the president, and the president's going to send the money for their arms deal. That's what's going on, because the United States really doesn't have the arms to be sent anymore. So
right.
they're just buying the black market. around the world.
And the other thing was now Kevin McCarthy, he wants to limit the spending to Ukraine and maybe come up with a particular amount that we should be able to send them, not what the Biden administration says, because it all should be going through Congress anyway. We used to vote on wars through Congress, and now it's just being done Biden's way. And
well, they gave the president a 180-day option for any action in the world, and they've stretched that out, meaning we're not at war. So each time we send an aid package or something like that, it's considered a brand new action, and so the clock starts over for another 180 days. So Congress can rein that in if they choose, but they don't want to. They don't want to have to be responsible for what's going on.
yeah, well, the weird thing is, and that I heard this morning, looking through a lot of these articles, is the Democrats are even very, they said, skittish about sending not only weapons anymore, but also that there's been too much money sent already, not just from us, but globally. And
well, Democrats are terrified of the use of military generally. They're afraid of those organizations because they're international organizations. They're not national organizations. Democrats are focused inward. They don't focus outward. So,
and pretty much all the equipment we've sent them, and you mentioned this before the show, they're just not making it. We sent them vests, and we don't even know what happened to the vest. According to some of the Ukrainian families are saying they're still waiting for vests that they've been waiting on since the beginning of the war.
Well, it's just like when
or grenades. They said
Russian tanks first came into Ukraine, and then they abandoned their tanks and their trucks. Well, guess who got some of those tanks and trucks?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was gypsies in Romania. It was stolen and then resold.
Then we had the whole thing when we sent a bunch of equipment over, and then they were just since they didn't really have military vehicles. Any truck that pulled up, they were loading military equipment in, not really checking credentials, and so a lot of that disappeared. And we don't even to this day don't
control
know.
That at border checkpoints. That's where they're trying to control these arms being moved out of the country, and so they've got these border checkpoints stacked up that take 4 and 5 days to get through a border checkpoint, right? They don't have, that's telling you they don't have enough people to do the searches.
Yeah.
They don't have dogs. That tells you they're not really in control of their borders.
And the other thing I heard, William, what, it don't have nothing to do with the military equipment, but there is more Ukrainian soldiers in hospitals than there are in the battlefield now.
So we know that there's 61,000 Russian soldiers that have been identified by the Ukrainians. We know that there's roughly 400,000 Ukrainian dead. So we've spun well past the 500,000 mark on just KIA, let alone wounded. So I would suspect on both sides the hospitals are just overflowing. And that's not just, that we think about that it's a one-time thing when you have people that come in and that are wounded. They may require 200-300 operations over a 2 or 3 year period. These are incredibly damaged human beings, missing all kinds of bits, pieces, and parts, and still having shrapnel embedded in them. This is just, it's ungodly evil, right? First of all, it's ungodly evil. And it's real tribute to our physicians, whether they're in the United States or other countries. And other countries don't have all the tools we have available here in the United States, but they're not turning people away. They're jumping into this and trying to do an honest job of piecing these folks, because what they're doing is they're piecing these folks' lives back together. It's not just their bodies, their lives.
Yeah, it is.
Back together. And it's admirable what they're doing, but the price of that sort of thing is almost bigger than the war itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we've had what was it? The cluster bombs. The big story came out, and then it was hush. And then we heard one of their ports was blown up. Then we heard they were going to block Russia with their grain, and that got silenced. And then all of a sudden, then we got this bill, 10 billion, 80 million going to Ukraine for aid. And it's all over the place. That's something I've seen, because one day it'll be they're real intent on them cluster bombs, and the media all brought it up, and then it was hush. What I'm thinking is, could it be the generals? Because we looked at the Afghanistan things and the money that went, and it was the generals that should have been there. Is Biden actually listening to our generals? They didn't he didn't, and the administration didn't during Afghanistan. Are they really listening to the generals for Ukraine? I just don't think so. I think it's Biden with NATO and the UK, and it's going to be their decision, because we don't really have a military force over there.
So Democrats again don't trust military action. The reason they don't trust military actions is they don't trust the military. All right? Let's just get right to it. They don't trust the military. They trust social organizations. They trust the State Department. They do not trust the military. So nothing Department of Defense or Defense Intelligence bring up to the Joint Chiefs to be discussed in the White House are really going to be taken seriously.
Yeah. And a lot.
And if the United States does get in action, they won't let them fight the fight. What they'll do is it'll require 72-hour okay, and everything's got to be okayed by the White House, because once again, they don't trust the military to do what the military does. They think they know how to be the generals better than the generals know how to be the generals. It's a symptom of the Democratic Party that just doesn't go away. It's not going to go away, and we have to accept it for what it is.
And and not only that, but we have our military that is a big part of what's going on in Taiwan and China, but also up in Syria and Israel. And I think I think that's what the generals are being told. The military is over here and here. We'll deal with NATO, and we're going to go about this with NATO.
Remember that the Democrats do respect special forces. Okay, not military, special forces. So special forces can go into those areas and say this and this needs to happen, and then that'll come up through Spec Op Command. That'll make it to the White House, and then the military be allowed to move forward.
Yeah.
It's backwards, okay? You use the military until there's something that can't get done. You bring in Spec Ops. So it's backwards, but once again, there's only certain groups that the Democrats do trust. It's like Victoria Nuland. She's a diplomat, and she's running the Ukraine war and half of what's going on in Africa. And she's just not trained for that sort of thing. She's a diplomat. She's not a killer.
Yeah. And so
Blinken is not a killer.
No, not really. No. And I think we've got the well.
You see,
I don't see it in his eyes, Floyd's eyes, or Lloyd. I'm sorry, and some of the others, and even when we have our the Pentagon stand up and talk, I just don't see the fire that we seen with Schwarzkopf or Powell or the Iraq war when it was gung ho and we knew what they were going to do, how they were going to do it, and how much they were going to spend. We just don't see it with this administration. We don't.
And we got out of their way, meaning the president said, I have this, and this objective. What do you need? Okay. What is it going to require to be sent into country? As soon as that arrived, they went to business, and they took care of what those objectives are, even though the president didn't understand what they were going to do, because a president is not a good general. A lawyer's not a good general. Diplomats are not good generals. Killers are good generals.
Yikes. But then again, you're right. You know, and they have been through, they didn't become a general for nothing. They worked their ways up through the ranks, and a lot of them have seen more. A lot of them seen the Iraq war. Some of them
even if they haven't been to war, they've been through the war college. So so much of the information that has been gleaned from previous wars are taught to them, and they can at least extrapolate that to the degree possible in their minds, how to operate a military. But people that are just learning on the fly, no, it's not the same as running a glee club. Sorry.
Yeah. And so I want to move on. A thing that was in the Military Times, and it's one of their top stories, is not just Fort Hood. It's called Fort Cavozo. I can't pronounce it. They have been without proper access to food in months. And I got a hold of my friend in San Diego and said, was it like there? And they said the commissary is pretty low, but a lot of the stores on the base. And now, William, you said you're not seeing a lack of food there. We're not here.
We're not seeing a lack of food. We're not seeing a lack of food in our grocery stores. We're not seeing lack of food or clothing stuffs. We're flush with it. What happens with the government is they hire contractors for everything that they need to get done, like food services or commissary services. Those are contracted operations. And when you have the majority of your logistics people now effective in operations outside the country, you're not watching these catering organizations. They'll get away with exactly what they think they can get away with. So it takes military leadership to keep them within their specified parameters, and they're just not wanting to spend the money on their operations. They're taking the money out of the operations, and they're leaving the soldiers high and dry. So what they need is logisticians to come in and, stomp on them and say, this is going to happen, or you're going to end up in a military court.
Yeah. Now this one we really discussed. It was about rare Russian VIP jet in North Korea spurs arms deal concern. And this is us being, we had satellites that seen the Russian military jet go to Korea and then back again. Now, that they were tracking data from Flight Radar 24, and it showed Air Force Illusion um, flying from
Illusion.
Moscow
Those
to,
are Illusion airplanes.
yeah, uh, from Moscow to Pyongyang or Pyongyang, Yang Pong.
Pyongyang. It's called Pyongyang. But okay.
There we go. Well, I'm all tongue twisted on it. Um, and they were there for a couple of days, and imagery showed aircraft in the international airport for about 36 hours. So now the United States is concerned there's an arms deal or a trade or something going on between Putin and Kim Jong Un. Now, they were talking, it could be a nuclear trade. Now, and I got to thinking, I told William today, and I said, why would Russia need nuclears? It'd have to,
They don't.
they don't.
They got the new. They got the
So what
upgraded
does,
SS-20s, the new SS-22 Satan missiles. They just simply don't need it.
yeah, so we don't, they're kind of speculating. And this is where I was saying at the beginning of the show, is this another flexing of the muscle saying, we're on top of it. We know that they're over there making trade deals, and because what we would if we were with
Sure.
NATO or Ukraine, we're making maybe trade deals with
If we were
NATO.
at war with Canada, we'd be making arms deals with Mexico. Sure, why not?
See, uh, so to me that when I read this, I kind of worried, and then I thought about it. What are they trading? And okay, now what Kim
They're
Jong Un
trading whatever
needs?
you can load on a train,
Yeah.
whatever can be stuck in a box car or flat car. That's what they're trading.
Now you said they were supposed to let the United States know if they fly over out of um, out of the country, but you were
So
saying,
if you go into international waters and you're identified by another country's radar, and you're questioned, you're required to give your tail number and your registration, right? But if you're flying within your own country's airspace and then you cross into another country's airspace and never enter uh, international airspace, that's not required.
yeah,
Those guys can move back and forth freely between those countries if there's a treaty between those two countries that they can operate civilian aircraft between them. They're
I
never
think
going to show up on radar. They're never going to be tracked.
I think that's what the problem is they seen it on satellite, and they did exactly what you said, and now they could be making an arms deal. But I'm thinking, if anything, Kim Jong Un needs Putin more than Putin needs him.
Well, Putin's in a pickle right now. So it's probably a 50-50, but it will over time tip back towards, Putin doesn't need Kim Jong-il. Or
Right. But
Un,
now
I'm
the other
sorry.
thing I
But
was I was thinking, William, is with China and Taiwan building up, it could be Putin, and this is all speculation, folks. Putin could be working out supplying military arms or protection and building North Korea up for that, for China and Ukraine.
look, Russia's Russia's flush with grain right now, and North Korea is always starving. Okay, they're always starving. They're always in hunger because
Mhm.
they prioritize their military. Well, this gives North Korea the opportunity to transfer weapons, which they're flush with, right? Small shoulder carried weapons, artillery pieces. They're flush with that sort of stuff, and get food shipments in. It's a win-win deal.
Now, the other thing is, now this is a rumor, and I'm not, I'm not real sure, is Putin is reported that the United States, or I should say Ukraine, is requesting a wall to be built um, for protection, not only for the EU, but Poland and all the way across. If they can't get the territory back from Putin that he's taken from Ukraine, maybe a wall would be put up to keep him from going any further. Um,
So they want to set up a demilitarized zone, and it's a police zone that's demilitarized. So one military can't go in, the other military can't go in. They put up fences on both sides, right? And they look at each other through binoculars and keep track of each other. Well, these countries that haven't paid for their defense, right? They haven't spent the money they should have on their own defense. Now all of a sudden they want a defensive structure.
mhm.
Of course they want a wall. They don't just want a wall, they want fences, they want moats, they want everything you can use to stop a tank or an aircraft from entering your airspace.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
then
they're terrified now because you have a military juggernaut that it initially got weaker, but now it's getting stronger, and they still haven't stepped up and done their own due diligence.
Here's one. I didn't mention this to you on the phone, William, but could probably lead into a pretty big discussion. Now we got the threat from Wagner. Wagner. Now
So W's are V's over there, and V's are W's, so it's Wagner.
Wagner. Yeah, I knew you had a name, and I couldn't remember what it was. Now Poland, of course, is a NATO ally, and it deploys more troops now to the Belarus border, and uh, they are sending thousands of troops over there. And it was basically today, the Polish deputy interior minister told the state run news agency uh, that Warsaw will deploy an additional 2,000. They were planning on sending 2,000. And they said that will be sent, but they're going to deploy an additional 2,000 troops. Um, to maintain illegal crossings. And now I was like, what? Well, what is Belarus illegally crossing? Do we know?
So we still have refugees trying to cross into Europe. And once you get to a free country like Poland, then you can move through Europe freely, right? And Poland doesn't need to have 8,000 troops on the border, by the way.
Yeah,
they need to have
that's what I was thinking.
150,000 troops on the border, and they don't want to step up.
Mm-mm. Well, and
they want just one military base in their country, and they need them peppered all over the place. They don't want to do that. They don't want to set up the logistics train. They don't want to set up the paper train. They just want to do what they do. They don't want to have to do what other countries have to do to survive. And now that there's a threat by, of all things, a mercenary group, yeah, they're willing to put 2,000 on there, but they want us to put 300,000.
Yeah, see, that's where that's even with military aid or even military equipment, any of that. They put in just a little bit, and then they want us to do a bunch, or the UK.
It's always the tail wagging the dog with those folks.
I think that's why Trump decided to get out of NATO, is because you can't get their backing, and NATO wanted to make all the decisions.
He didn't say he wanted to get out of NATO. He said, look, if you're going to stay in NATO, right, you have to pay your fair share.
Right.
If you as a country going to stay in NATO, you have to pay your fair share. He's just saying that, look, the United States is not going to give you a free ride anymore.
Hmm.
You have to pack your own weight.
And now we're back to exactly what he just said. What you just said. We're back to we're pulling the weight. Now, I even read with the BBC that they're even getting sick of NATO saying, with the handout and saying, the United States did this much, you need to do equal. And then when they look over in the European or Germany or um, Poland, it's pittance again. And
So
I think
all these
even
countries
UK is getting
under Klaus
upset.
Schwab are shrinking their economies.
Yeah.
They can't go to a war footing. They're
Mm-mm.
effectively deaf, dumb, and blind when it comes to war. Okay? And they're both angry, and at the same time, thankfully, they don't have to deal with their military structures, because all these countries are uncomfortable with their militaries. Militaries are what overthrow kings and queens over history. All right, it's not peasantry like once happened in France. It's usually military leaders take out kings and queens and install a new aristocracy. So
Yeah.
none of these countries have ever been comfortable with powerful militaries.
No. And see, I always thought that, they were finally starting to come together as a whole. But then I was thinking, no, maybe I don't want them as a whole because that just makes it worse. Until we started in Ukraine. And what people don't understand is this has been a long drawn out war from 2015, 2016, when Ukraine with Crimea. And so we have been putting money into Ukraine for almost 10 years, or well, at least 10 years, because it even went back to 2013. So 10 years we've been funneling all this money into Ukraine and to help them. Um, to fight off the Russians. But back then it was so simple because it was only Russian mercenaries with Ukraine mercenaries. And it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think Russia just finally got fed up and said, forget it, I'm coming. But they did say that. They would eventually go into Ukraine. So and Putin says what he's gonna do. And they knew it. And I think that's why they latched on to the United States and to help them out. Um, so,
Putin should have latched on the United States to deal with the problem that was occurring in those territories rather than invade them. He violated. He is the most egregious violator right now.
well, you know what was,
So can't be okay with what Putin's done. However, he is acting in a methodical, logical way. He's
mhm.
been a respectable adversary, if you will.
Yeah. Um, Now, if we go back, when Ukraine first started having problems, the mercenaries did. Now, we went there. We didn't send very many troops, but the UK did too. And that's when we started seeing the big blow up of Ukraine, um, and those fleeing to Crimea. And then Putin stepped in and protected them. And a lot of people don't realize that. And we had quite a few senators and congressmen go over there and try to talk to Ukraine and telling them, we don't want to see this great big war. Back then, they were trying to thwart it. And then
This
now,
always happens when new countries are created. It takes 30, 40 years, and then there's dissent starts in border regions. Okay,
yeah.
so this is a natural ebb and flow of creation and dissolution of nations.
Yeah, and it's
The State Department should have known this was coming. The State Department should have got ahead of this.
Or even the
The
Pentagon.
United Nations should have got ahead of this.
Um, yeah, and the United Nations, I think they were more concerned about, the World Health Organization, the pandemic, what was going on around the world with that. I think they just didn't pay enough attention to what was actually going on over there with Ukraine, Poland, and Belarus, and these others as it started building up. And now it's kind of too late, and the only one really going and complaining is Putin, about what's going on, what they have found out about Ukraine. And of course, the
Well,
UN isn't
they've got
savvy
he's
to
got their
Russia.
attention that he couldn't get before, right? Because he felt like he couldn't get their attention. I believe that's what they said, right?
Hmm.
He's got their full attention now.
Oh yeah, now, and they, with so many of them, they should, in so many sectors of the UN, I think they really could have paid a lot more attention in 2016 to 2020, so this didn't build up because you could see it. I was keeping an eye on Ukraine, um, because of Zelensky and Trump, and not only that, but what was going on over in Ukraine with Burisma. And so I learned all of this, and I kept saying, why isn't the UN stepping in and trying to stop it before the UK comes in, we come in, NATO comes in, and why does it keep building, building, building? And I think it's because they didn't all just sit down and have a little powwow. I think if they all
They
would have
didn't
sat
need
down
the
and
military to
talked,
come in the first place. They
yeah,
needed police officers that were even-handed, so Russian speakers and Ukrainian speakers were treated the same in those regions when it comes to crime and property thefts and just basic how government works towards the people. And they needed better policing, and it was allowed to fester, and eventually policing wasn't an option.
yeah.
And the United Nations is pretty good at policing, actually. I
Hmm.
mean, I hate to say that they're good at policing. They're pretty poor at war fighting, all right, but they're pretty good at policing, and they're also pretty good at distributing foods and making sure that things get shipped and logistics happen properly.
Yeah,
They're pretty good at that, and that's what should have been in there.
yeah,
But nobody wanted to spend the money on it
yeah.
because once the UN troops go in, everybody has to divvy up.
Hmm.
It's got to be paid by the entire group.
And the other one
So
is
they all
the other one, moving on to Israel, is this could have been calmed down. I keep looking at what's going on in Ukraine and how it started and it built up. The other, the other is Israel, because if we would have been in there helping Israel, I don't think Iran would be shipping um, arms to Hezbollah or Hamas, or now today I found out somebody's hurt.
we got the post step on. Better go save someone.
Yeah, there's a few out there to save puppy. Uh, I hope he's not hurt too bad. Um, so as we looking at Israel, what I was finding out was we let it build up with just Hamas and Hezbollah, and with it going against Israel, and then there's Syria, and we had that big war in Syria where everybody went over, even China. And then it seemed like it settled down. Well, now it is now built up to Hamas, Hezbollah. Um, then we have some Syrians. We have mercenaries from Iran. We have ISIS and mercenaries. And they even said ISIS K, or the ISIL K, or whatever, mercenaries that are teaming up with Iran to go after not just Damascus now, but they said eventually they're going for Israel. And this
So,
is what Netanyahu was stating today is, and he didn't state all those different fashions of groups. He just said Hezbollah is now with Iran, are now stating that they are going to hit Damascus, close to Damascus, and then they'll go after Israel.
so the we have to keep track of two things here. First is this is an Islamic revolution.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay, that's the first part. Um, it's an Islamic revolution, and historically, Arabs kill Arabs. All right, they're always fighting. They're never happy. Okay, um, they're always killing each other. So Arabs kill Arabs. It's tribal.
Mm-hmm.
And the next thing is we could have put blue hats in with the Red Cross, okay, Red Cross in Islamic states, and you got Red Crescent to do their work in Western states, meaning that you don't have like people with like people when it comes to policing, so that they're putting their arms and stuff, their weapons in hospitals and things like that. So we've done a poor job of separating out these warring factions. And once these warring factions start sniping at each other,
Mm-hmm.
it's beneficial for second and third countries to go ahead and use them as proxies because they're already engaged.
Well, oh, I wish I could remember his name, the president of Syria. He said the United States was wanting a long drawn out war with Syria like they did with Afghanistan. And see, now, if they didn't, so he stopped it and said no. They went about it a lot differently, and everything started calming down. But then, we seen us pull out of Afghanistan, and then now we're seeing a war that even Zelensky said could be 10 to 20 years.
Well,
Why
they
do we
wanted
keep
to
wanting these?
overthrow all the governments in North Africa and also in
Mhm.
Arabia. All right, and
Why
so
do why
they're
does our
correct.
government want long 10-year wars? I mean, I know money for the warmongers. I mean,
So that came down through the Obama Clinton Obama and Clinton State Department area time, and then the orders were cut and sent to the Department of Defense.
mm-hmm,
So we thought that we'd taken care of this problem with Iraq. We had this issue with Afghanistan well in hand and could move out at any time. Okay, we could move out at any time. We could do nation building, okay, and move out at any time, but the military could move out at any time. So they decided, well, yeah, why not? They've got oil. We don't like them. We're doing nation building in Iraq. Why not just do nation building everywhere?
yeah,
And
and
the fact is Arabs are not Westerners, okay? They're Islamics, and their way of thinking about government has nothing at all in common with ours.
no, no, no.
So
I
we
think
have to
that
respect
came
the
out.
people that are there with their ideas.
I think that came out with Obama when we started realizing uh, when we were looking at when he was pulling out of Iraq, and then we started seeing the whole Muslim movement with the Shiites and the other ones.
Well, let's be honest. Obama wanted to end his presidency and then move over and become the premier leader of the United Nations.
Yeah.
He wanted the presidency to be a stepping stone. So
Right.
anything that moved in that direction, okay, and you know, he has his religious proclivities, and that's a good fit for him and the United Nations. So what is he going to do? What is he going to do? He's going to act in his own best interest.
Mm-hmm. And you know, I think that's where when we seen him pull out, and then we seen the whole us pulling even out of Syria, Aragon. Is it that, or am I wrong? I can't think of the Syrian president's name, and normally I just flows.
Alpha al-Assad.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's the son of the Syrian president before, right?
Right. Yes.
Dynastic. He's not as smart as his father was.
And then we did have Putin wanting well, it was Putin and China wanting the oil that he had. And so, you know, they went in, and what really surprised me when it was just when we pulled out a little bit, and Putin or Russia and China and I think Turkey, they had went in, they were kicking buns, and it finally calmed down.
Putin and China wanted ports in the Mediterranean.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that was their interest initially.
Right.
And then the oil.
Yeah.
But Turkey wanted to rid themselves of the Kurds. All right.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And exploit the oil. Right. And China wants their Belt and Road to go through the world. Right. So.
Right. And so that's where I think it's
through Israel. So why not just move it through Syria, Jordan, and out into the Persian Gulf area?
And so that's what I think we're seeing today, where Damascus was added, because Damascus seems to be a little bit more independent than the rest of them around. And Syria does, on time to time, does help Damascus, but it seems like Lebanon and Hezbollah and Hamas just bear down on them all the time.
So Lebanon is fully Islamic, all right, but Damascus is part Alawite Christian.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And
it's kind
of there's that mixture, and it's always a volatile mixture. So you have to have a powerful strongman. And Hafez al-Assad had protected the Alawites, and since this thing in Iraq happened, the Islamic clerics throughout that region have wanted to purge all Christians out of the area.
Right. Yeah. And see,
so he was actually defending Christianity in a way. Okay, he was also taking care of his own power base, but he was also protecting Christianity out of the far part of Damascus. So is he all bad? No, he's not all bad. Is he good? Well,
no,
we wouldn't call him
not all good,
but it works there, right?
Yeah, it's like you were saying, William. They're so different over there with the Islamics over there and Arabs. They are way different than what we are used to in our wars, what we do with other countries.
We don't think like them. They don't think like us.
They'll slit your throat. You know.
And we should respect them for who they are. They have their ideas. They came up through generations due to their geography and their geology. They understand their needs. We don't understand their needs. So.
And thousands of years of history there. I mean, it was the original, and you know, they flipped back and forth throughout the thousands of years, and not only that, to become Arab and Islamic and Muslim and extremes, and to the point where what we see today with terrorism, because they had to have terrorism. When one side got worse, the other side got worse. And they've had thousands of years to become the worst of the globe. That's why I think they've got terrorism.
When Jacob with the soldiers of Israelite came into the Philistine lands, okay, that's the beginning, almost of the book of Genesis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was 3,000 years ago. They've been fighting ever since. The Palestinians are not Palestinians; they are Philistines.
Right.
We just gave them a different name. They're Philistines. That's Philistinia, whatever you want to call it. And this has been endlessly going on.
Yeah, an endless war over there for thousands of years. And this is what we're, I think, seeing today, to where they're trying to choose. And I really think that when we look at the Arabs, I really think they're trying to, with Egypt and a lot of them Arabs, they do try to help out a little bit. But for the most part, I think they just stand back and go, have at it, guys, because we don't know what to do with y'all anymore.
Well, Egypt has the canal.
Sunni and the Shiites, so, right? I think that's what it is.
They have the Suez Canal, and they don't want to upset that. That's a moneymaker for them. That's how they survive. So they've been pretty good with the rest of the world. Egypt, for its most part, has been pretty good with the rest of the world. Even when they have uprisings in Egypt, they're uprisings that stay in Egypt. They don't spill out, typically.
And so, in the meantime, we've got Israel, and sitting smack dab in the middle of them. And I just think, to me, they just want to squeeze them out and tell them to go somewhere else.
There's no place else for
Israel to go. But they have got one of the best militaries. And I think they have, Iran realizes this. And I think, that we just got through saying they've got their own Muslim, Islamic religions over there. And they don't want the Christians in there. And we've mentioned that. But what I'm thinking is, if they do start with Israel, there's too many Christians around the world that will just jump in, and it's going to be again everybody fighting for another country. And I don't know if Netanyahu really wants that, because everybody abandoned him. But when it comes down to it, I think they'll all flock back. So how much trust will be in there? Probably not much. So, but William, I think we're done. You want to add anything?
So, on the global stage, power dynamics never change. When one superpower moves, another superpower has to move. It's not should they or could they or would they. It's a must, an absolute. So, if you look at that from the top down, a lot of this other stuff is going to make sense. As you go take top-down view through these superpowers and percolate down through the different societal organizations like farming, like banking, like all these other things. The rest of all of this is going to start making some sense. Not complete sense, because you don't think like people on the other side of the planet think. But it's going to have some logic to it. And then you can plan on what you're going to see into the future. And it's not as chaotic as the news would have you believe, and it's not incomprehensible like the media would have you believe. You just need the Rosetta Stone to be able to understand what's happening and be able to pull out the likely truth from the unlikely truth. Because remember, in war zones, truth is the first thing to die. But if you have those understandings and you see these trends build in different directions, it's not difficult to understand how the world's working. And it's not as terrifying as people would have you believe. You can be pretty confident that our militaries understand all of this. Okay, they're well versed in this, and don't be afraid with respect to our militaries being able to control or contain situations that build in the world if the United States sees an interest for themselves in controlling and containing it. We can do that. The problem is what is our diplomats? What are the promises being made by diplomats? What type of information is being given back and forth secretly between governments? These are the really dangerous things because they're not out in the open. You can see tanks and military people moving around. You can't see people in suits and T-shirts and what they're up to. So just keep that in mind. Remember also that political power comes from the kitchen table, and Mom wields it. It's not Dad, because she's one that's plugged into all the other mommies in the neighborhood and the other organizations. Political power comes from its base from the women of a country, and if you want things to change and you're a woman, you have the most power to wield.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I said what I need to say. Just thank you, Ellie, for giving me the opportunity. I really dislike communists. I'm a cold warrior, and I don't care for Nazis any more than communists. And if I can stay in the fight, then I'm going to do it. And you give me the opportunity, so thank you.
Oh, well, you're a great co-host. So with that, folks, subscribe and hit the like button and the bell. Hit that bell so you guys could keep seeing the shows. And share the World War III report with me and William. And, of course, tomorrow we'll be back with the weather and lifestyle news. And then I'll have the next part of the special report that I'm doing. So thanks again, William. And we will see everyone tomorrow. And God bless.